Hey there, welcome to my channel again. I'm Remi and this is Programming with Remi. So welcome to the channel again, and this is the first video where we're going to be learning about HTML, what HTML is, what it stands for, and what you can gain from it. So get your notebook, your writing materials, your computer ready to learn. Alright, so let's start with the first video. So we're looking at introduction to HTML. So what HTML is, then we're going to look at how the internet works, and when I mean the internet, we're going to understand what that means, and also a concept that I come up with, which is a known term, which is get your feet wet. So let's start with the first slide. So what is HTML? So HTML stands for hypertext markup language and is the foundation upon which the World Wide Web is built, and it's the backbone of every website. The idea of HTML is take HTML like you're building a structure, right, and serve as the building blocks of that particular building. So that's a little understanding of what HTML is. So also have what we call HTML. Let's look at the HTML history. HTML was developed by Tim Berners-Lee and it was created for the purpose of sharing research materials electronically. So he come up with he's a scientist and he works in the IT department of that particular institution, and he come up with an idea of sharing files with people that are at different location, and that's how HTML come to bear. So that's a short history about HTML, and one of those important things I'm going to look at in HTML is the one this highlights here, hypertext markup language. And hypertext as the word imply, what hyper means is not just a text, it is said that is doing more than the function of a text. And if you look at my slide, they said hypertext is text displayed on a computer or other electronic device with reference to other text that the user can immediately access, usually by a mouse click or a key press. So that means that you'll have gone to a website, maybe you want to buy something online, and you click on a button or a link and it takes you to another link. That's an example of what an hypertext means. So, and if you look at the illustration I have here, I have 3 screen display of a particular website, and the first link, when someone click on this, on my blog, it takes the person to this page, which is my blog. That's an example of a link. And another link is when a user click on contact us, it takes us to this screen, which is the contact us page, right? Now another example is when a user click on this particular image, it takes them to this particular portfolio. So that's an example of what HTML hypertext means. So let's go to that other definition, which is the markup language. And as the name implies, language, which means communication. So for instance, if I want to instruct someone to get something for me, I could just say, okay, get this for me. That's an instruction. The person will carry out that instruction because you understand my language. So HTML is not a programming language, it's a markup language. And what a markup language uses set of markup tags to characterize text elements within a document, which gives instructions to the web browser on how the document should appear. Now if you look at the example here, now this text is bold. Now this markup is giving this text a particular property, a particular information. Okay, this text is bold, and if I type this in my HTML file now, this will be the result, which is this text is what is bold. So that's an example of a markup language. So let me go to my next slide. Okay, so now let's look at how the internet works. Now people access the internet from different devices and different location, some from their laptops, some from their mobile devices, from their screen readers. So now let's look at, we have 4 examples here. We have Favor, Kate, Jane and John, and they are all accessing the device from different location at different time. So it's important that if you're going to learn how to develop a website, you must have at least a basic understanding of what it means to access the website, to access the net, to access the internet. And the internet is not just something that is invisible, it's a interconnection of so many devices together for the purpose of sharing information, and that information being shared is made available because there's a network already in place, and for the purpose of what, of sharing information. And that's what internet is. So now, for an example of favor to access www.google.com, there's a process that goes into how it's done. And for example, if you pick up your mobile device and just type www.google.com, in milliseconds you have the results on your display. But a lot of processes have gone ahead in the background which you need to understand. So that's why I put out this little information. So for instance, let's say Jane here is accessing Google from her laptop. So now there are three properties that we have to understand as a basic. Now we have the browser, and we have the domain name server, and we have the server. So we're going to understand how these different properties ensure that Jane receive Google on her laptop. So let's just go ahead. All right, so let's say for example now this is Jane, and she's searching for www.google.com. Now let's look at this int first. Said in search of my friend's address. Now I'm going to go back to this int a little bit, but let me start with the first step. So the first step is Jane is on a laptop, www.youtube.com. so your browser, the first thing your browser does is that your browser requests for the IP address of YouTube from a domain name server. Now this is not, it's a bit technical, but is you understand it more better. So what the browser does is that the browser, you can liken your browser to you in search of your friend's address in a particular location, and youtube.com is in a particular location, and it has a particular address which is called an IP address, and IP stands for Internet Protocol Address, and or it can also refer to as a domain name. So it's a specific address for where youtube.com is located, and every device online have a specific IP address. With the computer you're using, your mobile phone, your gadgets, your devices that can connect to the internet, they all have a specific IP address. So the first thing is that your browser will request for the location of YouTube from what's called a domain name service server. So now the next step is that, which is the second step, is that the domain name server is more of like a phone book, like a phone book that checks the IP address and send this information back to your browser. Okay, this is where www.google.com is. Then your browser then send a request to the location of the server hosting youtube.com. Now a typical server is a computer that is online 24/7. That means it doesn't go off, and Facebook has billions of servers that operate their system. So, and once your server is able to locate the website you are requesting for, then it sends a feedback back to you, okay, that you have received the website. And now the first step is that you see the website displayed on your computer. So this is the basic process of how the browser works. So your browser then send the request to the server hosting the YouTube website. All right, so let's go to the next slide now. So let's get to your free. So now we're going to look at creating our first web page. Now this may look a little bit technical, but it's not very technical. So there are two important things we're going to use to create our first web page. We need a browser. It can be Chrome, Mozilla, Edge, or Brave. any browser you're using. And we also need a code editor, and a code editor is what kind of IDE is an integrated development environment whereby you can code, you can develop new concept and new ideas. So we have different ones. We have the Notepad++, Visual Studio, and Sublime. So but for this class we are going to be using Visual Studio Code for this class. So alright, so let's go further to the next slide. So now creating a document is more of like a typical Word document. Now this is my Word, and you can see that I have, this is the main heading, and I have this an heading, right? And I have a paragraph where you can say this text can be an introduction to the main heading of, or a definition of a concept or term, and you can say I have another subheading and another subheading, and I have paragraphs underneath it. So this is an example of a document, right? So what you want to do, what you want to use HTML to do is that you want to make this document to be displayed on our web page for the opportunity for it to be electronic available over the world. So that's the importance of why we are doing this. So now let's go to a practical example of creating your first web page. So now what do you need to create your first web page? Now this is the step. So what we're going to look at now is I'm going to create a new folder for the project. Create a new file in your Visual Studio Code. Type the link of markups into the editor of your browser. Open HTML file with your browser, then display the HTML file on your browser. So let's go ahead. So now I put a link description of how you can download Visual Studio Code, and if I go to my browser now, this is the link, so I'll put it down in the video description, so you can just click. If you're using a Windows system or a Mac system, it's also available for Mac OS and Linux too, so you can download the video studio and install it. But I have already installed it, so I will start my Visual Studio Code now. So the first thing we said is that you need to create a new folder for the project. So I'll go to my file, documents, let me create a new folder. So I'll call this folder class projects. Okay, alright, so I've created the first folder. So now I'll go to my Visual Studio Code. Alright, so now I will open the folder. The folder I will open is the folder that I created earlier on. So documents, and then okay, so documents, then class projects. So I will select this particular folder. So now Visual Studio Code has opened this folder for me. Now, so in this folder I'm going to create a new file. In next video we are going to look at a bit of understanding how Visual Studio Code, but for this class let's just understand how to create a first web page. So if you come to this section here, you can see that I have the opportunity to create a new file. So I'll create a new file here. Now one thing you must observe is that HTML documents use the extension .html or .html. Now this extension is very important because this will define how your file will be read. Now for example, if you have a Word document is saved with .doc, so that's a file extension or file description of describing which type of file it is. So and that's the same thing. For example, we have an mp4, .mp3, JPEG. So we have different file extension for HTML. Either you save it to .html or .html. So let me go back to my Visual Studio Code now. So I'll create a new file, then I'll call this file, just call this file index .html. Alright, so now I've created the file, right? So I've just put a little bit of code. Don't worry if it's looking not clear now, but just watch the video and then practice. Alright, so I'll just put a little bit of code here now. We explain this in the next video. Alright, so now what I'm trying to do is that the document that we have here, I'm trying to have this document in our web page. So that's what we're doing. So I have my head, okay, I have the title, okay, I call this my first web page. All right, so now, okay, all right, so we have the first heading. This is the main heading. Okay, then we have another paragraph, the text, okay. All right, so now we have another heading, right? Okay, and this is a sub heading. Okay, and then we have another paragraph, and this can be list of items. And we have another heading. This is another sub-heading. Okay, so let's have another paragraph again. All right, this is another paragraph on the sub-heading. All right, now, so after the code now, so what I will do is that I will save this by pressing Ctrl S. So now it's saved now. So I'll minimize this and go back to my file, file explorer, and then come to class project. And once I come to class project, you see that I already have the file here now, and you will see because I had the extension there, you observe that it brought out an icon for me, which is an icon of a browser that I'm using here. So if I double click it to check my web page now, this is my first web page now. This is the main page, and this text can be so this is my first web page now, and this page can be available online. So that's a bit understanding. This is the first page you are creating now. So now I want to there will be a link down for a practical project whereby you can also be able to give an assignment that you can also practice and create your own first web page. All right, so let me go back to my slide now. So okay, so now we have been able to create a web page. So today we're going to stop here and continue next class. So today we have been able to look at HTML, what it stands for as a markup language. We're able to understand how the internet works and how to create a web page. So a practice question will be in a link down below. So and also I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel, like, share, and click on the notification bell for more uploads that we're going to do. All right, thank you for watching.